Gotta think of a joke to open up the video, but I can't think of one.
And I'm here to report a terrible crime.
And what terrible crime is that?
This one.
I'm Lindsay, and this is my review for Birds of Prey, or the fantabulous emancipation of Harley Quinn. I'm just gonna say, it's Birds of Prey. I was very excited for this movie. I'm a huge Margot Robbie fan. I think she's extremely talented. She's beautiful. She seems like a very nice person, and I like the roles that she picks for herself, and she always does an amazing job in those roles, in my opinion. I wasn't the biggest Suicide Squad movie fan. The best thing in that movie was Margot Robbie and her portrayal of Harley Quinn. I think it was one of its very few saving graces, because that film had a lot of issues. So going into this one, I was slightly skeptical, but still very excited to see what they were going to do with this character and with the other characters that they're involving in this storyline. So I went Thursday night to the sneak peek showing, and me and my group were the only people in the theater, which I thought was a little surprising, but not too surprising with some of the backlash that was already happening online with this film. And I'd have to say my overall thoughts are pretty positive. I did enjoy the film. I thought it was entertaining. So first we'll talk about what I did like about the film, and then we'll talk about what I didn't like about the film. The first thing I liked, of course, was Margot Robbie. I thought she did a great job again. I think it added a little more depth to the character. I liked the cartoonish tone of the film. Everything was very over the top and cartoonish, from the acting and the set design and the costumes and the makeup and the violence for the most part. And it was just a very hyper-realistic world. I really liked the soundtrack. I thought it was a good mix of classic pop hits and new music. It wasn't as ham-fisted as it was in Suicide Squad, where it just seemed like they would just plunk in these pop songs that really had no context, and it was just like one after the other after the other. This one, it integrates a little more seamlessly. Not perfectly, but a little more seamlessly. I also really enjoyed the fight choreography. It was almost all practical, and some of the set pieces were really great that they fought in, and the stunt work was really good, really on point, and really fun to watch. I really liked the character of the Huntress and how they made her like super socially awkward. I thought that was an interesting choice, and I think it worked really well. And it added another humor dynamic to the group.
We're gonna have to work together.
Sure. And that was another thing I really liked. There's a lot of really good humor in this film. Some of it's very, very dark and twisted. Ewan McGregor's character is very funny. He's very over the top. But overall, the sense of humor in this film was pretty on point. I also liked how the overarching plot, or the overarching bad guy, or what they had to do, was not this world-ending thing. It was much more toned down and not overblown and bloated. It was just a small crime story and more insular, so it didn't have these huge worldwide effects, because it seems like every single comic book movie that we see, you know, they're fighting some laser pointing into the sky or some invading alien force, where I enjoyed this one a lot because it was a small story. It was a simple story, but told in a very outlandish, cartoonish way, and it had a very fun sensibility about it.
I named him Bruce after that hunky Wayne guy.
And to address some of the backlash against this film already about, you know, it's directed by a woman, it's written by a woman, it stars women and is about women. I think a lot of that was very premature, because when a film overly pushes the girl power narrative, that even turns me off, because I feel like it's very pandering and almost condescending. I didn't feel that way in this film. The subtext of it is there, but it's not in your face. It's not girl power. It's more, we're the secondaries and we've been used and abused by these powerful figures, so we need to band together to fight back. It wasn't girls versus boys so much as it was the powerful versus the used, is how I took it. But I mean, there are moments here and there of, you know, go girl, but it wasn't overblown or pushed to those cheesy levels that can turn people off, at least in my opinion. So now let's talk about what I didn't quite care for in this film. At the beginning of the film, there's a lot of jumping around in the timeline, which isn't confusing so much as it just really drags the pace down because you're not quite sure where it's going or why it's told that way. It just took a while for everything to get going because they were doing these going forward and back and forward and back. A majority of that can be chalked up to some of the editing issues. The editing in this film, I think, kind of ground it to a halt at times, where things would just, they'd speed up and then they'd just grind to a halt, and then they'd speed up and then they'd just grind to a halt. And most of that was in the first half of the film, where the second half of the film seems to pick up a lot more. But that was one thing that really stuck out to me, was just the editing and the pacing at times. The tone of the film is overall very fun and bright and cartoonish, but I think they could have pushed it even further, especially with the violence. And this is a rated R film. There's lots of swearing and there is a lot of violence, but I think they could have pushed it even to like Deadpool level violence, where you're seeing a lot more blood, a lot more broken bones. I mean, you see broken bones and things like that, and people being shot and stabbed, but I think if they would have pushed it even further with that violence, I think the tone would have come together a lot better. Also, this film did suffer a little bit from Suicide Squad-itis, in that we'd meet a character and then we'd get this flashback to their backstory. And sometimes we'd be introduced to characters very late in the film and wouldn't quite get a lot of their backstory, and then they'd be gone. And so that character's involvement or impact on the story was just kind of left dangling. And so you had a lot of questions about them. And also some of the dialogue was a little cheesy. I mean, this whole film is cheese-tastic and that's what it's going for. But like I said, with some of the uneven tone issues, it was more obvious and stuck out more at times. So it was just awkward in some scenes. I think is the best way to put it. Just a little awkward.
What?
You are so cool.
But overall, I enjoyed this film. I laughed a lot. I really enjoyed the cartoonish nature of it. I'm glad it was rated R because I think it really, really would have suffered if it wasn't rated R. And I've heard talk that this is going to be a Harley Quinn trilogy where they're going to do next Gotham City Sirens, and then it'll be Birds of Prey versus Gotham City Sirens. So I'm looking forward to that. I hope this film does well because these are characters that I think have a lot to offer and some good stories to tell. And I think if they just keep pushing the cartoon level and the over-the-top level, I think it'll just get better and better. And in my opinion, Margot Robbie can just do no wrong. She's perfect. Well, that's gonna do it for this review. So until next time, this is Lindsay signing off. I'll check you later.